Well, I hope you're excited for this section like I am. We're going to get into our discussion of functions. Yeah, one of my favorite parts of the course. You're going to love this. Functions allow us to decompose our big, projects when we code in Python. And shout out to ChatGPT that I think did a bang up job on my request for a really cool decomposition using functions in Python slide. Anyways, so what we like to do is we like to take a big complex program that we need to write, and we love to break it up into functions. One way you can tell you can probably benefit from a function is if you're looking at your code and you keep doing the same thing over and over and over again in code. Yeah, that's a sure sign that you probably could benefit from a function that does that over and over again for you. Something else that's great about decomposing our big applications into functions is we can get different teams working on different functions. Yeah, so they don't step on each other's toes at all. So where do functions come from? Well, you already know some of these sources. For example, we've been using the built-in print function over and over and over again in our course. We've been using the built-in input function over and over again. So a lot of these functions are built right into Python. Something else you remember doing in our course is you remember bringing in custom functions from modules. Yeah, you import a module like the random module, and then you use functions from inside it. You use functions in classes. Now, this is beyond the scope of our entry-level Python programming course, but just know that inside of classes that we can define functions, and use that way. They're called methods inside of a class. And finally, something we are tackling in this section of our course, and that is you can define your own functions. Yeah. Super fun. And how you do that, it's really simple. You go in and you say in your code, I want to def, that's short for define. I want to define a function. And you give it a name and parentheses, and then you do the colon, and then you indent what that function's going to do. Yeah, the function needs at least one line of code to be valid. So we define a function in very, very simple syntax like this. Now, let's jump in and actually see this in action so we can learn a little bit more about it as we introduce it to you here. So let's start a new file, and let me try this. I'm going to define my underscore. How about we give it some actual function? Let's give our function a function. How about define my signature? Yeah, this will actually do something. And what it will do, notice there was an automatic indent there nicely. And that's great because we need to indent the body of our function. I'm going to say print, and we will print my full name, which really is a lot of typing that you have to do. So great. I don't have to ever print my full name again. Oh, thank goodness. Yeah, I don't ever have to print all that again because I have now defined a function that will print my signature. Now, if we run this, it does absolutely nothing. Let's prove that. I'm going to do a file save. Let's save this into our downloads. We'll call it, just test. So let's save this, and we are going to run this, and it does nothing. Yep, it ran. Yes, it ran, and there wasn't an error or anything like that. It just did nothing, and that's as expected because we're just defining the function here called my signature, but we're not calling it is the specific Python verbiage that we use. Yeah, we're not calling it. So let's call it. First, I'm going to print our program starts here. Our program starts here. All right, so you can see what I'm doing here. This is when the program will actually start doing something, you know, that we can see when we run it. And notice I can then call the my signature. And so we just reference it with the my signature function name. And then how about print? And we're going to print our program ends here. All right, so what's going to happen? Well, the program is going to run. It's going to process this. It's right at the top, and it's going to process this, and it's going to know what the mysig function is and what to do. But then it's going to print our program starts here. It should then drop in our signature, and then it should print our program ends here. Yeah, because what happens is we define it, and then when we call it, it jumps up here for the execution, but then it's going to return us to the next line in just our regular old programming, if you will. So let's go ahead and file save this and make sure we understand how to call these functions and how they are going to work from a logic perspective in our code. And look at that. It works just like we thought it would. So one thing to watch out for is you clearly are going to need to have to define your function before you call it. Yeah, you'd have to do that. The Python works from a top-down perspective, and Python's not going to search forward in your code to see if you defined the mysig function. So be sure to get those definitions done early in your code. All right, folks. Well, we are starting to build our knowledge about user-defined functions, and we've got lots more cool stuff to tell you about with this. So I hope to see you in the next video.